What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. We are continuing our 3-week series on the videography side of the LUMIX cameras, just like we did for the photography side over the last couple of weeks. And today we're going to primarily focus on the audio side of the camera as well as the outputs. So when I say outputs, I mean things like RAW over HDMI, various different ways to set the camera up for output. So if you're recording in log, but you want to have output of a different color space, things like that. And then when we're going to be going through with the audio side of it, we're going to be talking a lot about the XLR1 and the XLR2, primarily looking at the XLR2 just because I don't have my XLR1 here anymore, and how you can set the camera up in various different ways for different audio recording functions. Kind of detailing in, what the differences are between using internal versus external, things to kind of maybe keep an eye on if you are looking to get the most out of your audio recordings. And yeah, just kind of going through there. If you have questions during the broadcast, make sure to tag at LUMIX USA, as you can see a number of people are doing. And we will work to get through as much of it as we can. Just forgot to turn off my notifications there. And yeah, we'll kind of just go through this. If we wrap up through the audio and the output kind of conversation, we'll go through and kind of open it up as a general AMA. I know the audio conversation is not really about an hour's worth of discussion, but I think between the two topics, we've got enough to cover here. Next week, we are going to be actually having Matt Fraser on, and we're going to be having a much more in-depth conversation about a couple of different topics, working out the details with Matt right now. So we should have details for that stream up shortly, and yeah, y'all get to talk to Matt, and yeah, have him back on the stream. So, before we dive into that, I want to remind those of you in the US about LUMIX Pro services. We have the Red and Platinum tier. Red is the free level program, so if you have just purchased the LUMIX camera, make sure you get yourself registered for LUMIX Pro Services Red. It's free. You follow the QR code on the screen. That's how you're going to get your extended manufacturer warranty, right, just by simply registering. You get 3 years added to your warranty. If you are a professional or just someone who likes to have much higher levels of service and support, or more peace of mind on the back end there, that's where you can take a look at the Platinum membership. That is a paid level service that gets you that added 3-year manufacturer warranty to all new purchases. But on top of that, you're also going to get a number of extra benefits there. So you're going to get 2-day repairs with next day shipping both ways. You're going to get 20% off out of warranty repairs. So if it's a drop, break, things like that, stuff that's outside of warranty, you're going to get a break on that as well. You're also going to get access to our membership hotline, so if you would prefer to speak to somebody instead of working through emails or chat, you have access to the phone number 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, East Coast time. And then there's access to things like annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates, all the kind of maintenance stuff that maybe you'd prefer us to handle if you don't want to handle it yourself. So I encourage you to take a look at those if you're in the US. Again, Red and Platinum tier. If you are outside of the United States, you can always take a look at the link down in the description for the global portal. That will let you know what's available in your region, so that you've got potential access. And it's going to vary region to region depending on what their service and support program has set up. So I encourage you to take a look at those if you haven't already. I also want to bring to everyone's attention, I posted this in a couple different forums and different places, but for those of you that are GH7 owners, or those of you that are looking to potentially pick up the GH7, we have just recently launched a new promotion here for United States customers. I know not all of you are United States customers, but if you have purchased a LUMIX GH7 in the US, or you are planning to purchase a LUMIX GH7, we have a really cool promotion that we partnered with SanDisk on here with the Pro-Cinema memory cards for the CF Express. So you get a free 320 gig CF Express card if you've already purchased the camera or you're planning on it, or you can pay you can pay $250 and upgrade to a 640 gig Pro-Cinema CF Express card. The registration and the claim page are down in the description below. So I encourage you to take a look at that if you've got the camera already, or if you're planning to get the camera. Know that you're getting a top spec card that has been validated by us and is going to work on every single thing that you want to do with the camera. So yeah, link down in the description for that. All right, let's kind of take a look at some of the questions that we saw here. Not all of these are video or audio or output related, but we can definitely go through some of these to start with. So Jeannie says, on the GH7, how can I set live crop on a function custom button and also have a function button to set to turn live crop off? It would help if I was not in my audio menu there. Let me double check something here, because I believe... So I can go... I have to remember where live crop is in the custom settings. I think it is in there. So one of the things that you can do with the LUMIX cameras is obviously, so I can just press and hold on most of the buttons on the camera, and I can drop into my custom settings here, and this is where I can adjust various different options that I have to be able to get in to do some things and customize the camera. So in this particular case, being able to set live crop on a function, custom function button. So you'll see here, I have two options here. I have live cropping settings as well as live cropping. So if I set this to live cropping, this will allow me to turn live cropping on. When you do it this way and just set it to live cropping, this is where you have to press the arrow to assign where you want the cropping to start. That part of the setup. So I can set, like my box there, I can move it, and then I can choose and say, hey, I want to move this down and do kind of a fine tune, kind of pull out and pan at the same time, right? So that lets you go in there and change that. You do have the update on the GH7 with this particular, where you can actually preview it. So I can press the trash can button, and this will preview what that move is going to be. So I'm not permanently stuck with it, but I have the option to go in and say, like, okay, is this going to look how I want it to go? If you press the trash button again, it's going to end that. Now, if you wanted to end this particular mode, this is where, okay, looking at it, you don't have an option to, click left in this case, because that's what I assigned it to. So in this case, what you would do is you would assign it to ideally you wouldn't assign this to the left arrow, because that's the one that's, when you're in here, that's how you're going to actually kind of activate it. So I can assign this to, say, to my right, and then I can turn it off. I can click it again, go in, set it up, press right, and then I can have the option to turn it off. So for Genie, basically the way you would do it is just press and hold one of the direction pads. I don't advise doing left, because left arrow is how you go into the settings to adjust the size and everything. But you also have the option there of doing live cropping settings, which will bring you into the menu where you can do some more detailed changes to this. So a couple different ways to do it. It depends on how fast you want to go into it. If you want to be able to custom function in to do all of the setting changes, then you go into the settings option. If you just want to turn it on, turn it off, that's where you go into just the live crop menu there. So hopefully that helps. That should be, I think that's probably the fastest way to do it. Minutes Black, S52X was replaced. I don't have a LUMIX UK contact. You would want to check probably through the LUMIX UK social handles to see who they'd have there. AF issue is that it's just so slow in tracking an object like a face or eye, even at +5. I have the 3518. When I tested a year ago via rentals, it worked great. So Minutes Black, $20 says that there's just a setting that you have set wrong. There's no such thing as like batch issues with stuff like that. It could be what mode you're in. There's so many different variables because I don't know what frame rate you're recording in. I don't know what resolution you're recording in. I don't know what +5 means because there are two separate options for that. And I haven't heard of this problem before. So I would recommend reaching out to LUMIX UK. You can reach out through their various different social channels. You can go to the Panasonic website on, for UK, for your region. And usually there's a method to reach out and contact them to troubleshoot it as far as that goes. But I've not run into any issues with that as far as it goes. So, and with the information you're giving, I don't really have enough to troubleshoot it here and get you kind of an info there. So here, my custom settings are photography settings. They used to be my custom video settings, but I don't know what changed. I would like to have them as video settings. I would need more information to be able to troubleshoot that. Most commonly, if you set the camera up, if you set your custom function settings up with the PASM dial, so you're in program, set it up, aperture, set it up, that kind of thing, those are photo modes. You'd have to go into creative movie mode and then save them accordingly. When you're in the movie mode, that's where, well, like I'm in right now as I just changed it out. That's where it's going to get you that kind of information to, what recording mode are you in. So unless I had that kind of information, I wouldn't really be able to troubleshoot as to exactly how you set it up. If you're doing things like exposure mode changes, for those that are also doing custom function settings, like C1, C2, that kind of thing, you'll also know that when you go into custom mode settings, and again, I'm using the GH7 here, you have a number of the abilities there to assign how many you want, also how you want them to load, and what actions you take on the camera will reset them to what you've pre-programmed them to, and then also what information you want loaded into it. So that's why it's a little difficult to troubleshoot that one. It could be any number of those settings which are changing there. So let's see here. G9.2 bursts are very slow to write to camera, even with pro-grade SanDisk V90s, even at 20sh. Using backup rec well takes some time, 1 to 2 minutes before I can review a photo. S5.2 pre-burst writes faster and don't have this lag. Wonder if G9 Mark II issue that could be improved with firmware. Old G9 is fine and unnoticeable. Please bring live crop to G9 too. The older G models had it, even the point-and-shoot ZS200. I would have to check on that one, McCary. I haven't done enough of the burst shooting with G9 Mark II compared to S5 Mark II. Anytime I've worked with them, I work with them kind of like in an isolated scenario. But I can take a look and see what would be up there. So, yeah. Lucky. Okay, and then we answered that one. All right, cool. So now that we're through those, like we said, we're going to be talking about audio for the remainder of the stream. Audio and outputs for the remainder of the stream today. So one of the things that we've gotten a lot of questions about has to do with things like 4-channel audio recording, since we've been doing that for a long time with the various different cameras. Actually, wait, Oasis. I wanted to know if there's any practical difference in terms of quality between 10-bit 420 MP4 versus 420 MOV. Quality difference, not so much, other than the fact that MP4 typically is lower bitrate. So yeah, you could argue that that's a lower quality piece of footage. MP4 versus MOV, it's just a wrapper difference. MP4 is going to work better if you're trying to edit on mobile devices. It's lighter weight typically. Usually it's lower bitrate, and that kind of goes hand in hand with it. But as far as like any inherent difference between 10-bit 420 in MOV or in MP4, the file itself doesn't really have any difference. It's going to come down to what the bit rates are. Oasis. Okay, so as I said, audio, we get a lot of questions about 4-channel audio and the controls that you can do across the board, right? Like how do you set up 4-channel? When does the 32-bit float audio come in if you're working on a GH7? And really just how does this system work, right? So one of the cool things if you have a GH6 or a GH7 is that we have a new audio interface specifically on this camera. And the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark IIX, you can access this menu now. This was added through firmware, so you can assign this to a custom function button and you can access this. Now, while I'm outputting over HDMI, you'll see that I can still see the video preview of what it is that I'm capturing, but on the camera itself, the blacked out part of the screen with the audio levels, this is going to be showing specifically the full screen, excuse me, the full screen on the back of the camera. Now, the reason why I bring this up is that if you have a camera that has this particular screen here, this is going to be your best friend if you are mixing for various different audio inputs. This is where I have the ability to go into 4-channel audio recording on this particular option, and I can select how I want that to work. Do I want to not be using 4-channel and only utilize 2-channel, which is something unique to the GH7? So I can click in and do 4-channel off, and then now I'm only getting channel 1 and channel 2. The cool thing with this is that channel 1 and channel 2 on the GH7 is literally only recording 2 channels. You're going to be getting just channel 1, channel 2. You're not going to get stuck with 4 channels with 2 that are empty. If I go into that 4-channel audio recording on this camera, you'll notice that there are 2 separate options here. There is XLR plus camera or just XLR. Now, if I choose XLR plus camera, what this tells me and what this is setting up to do is this is saying I am going to use the in-camera microphones. So as of right now, I'm using the actual in-camera, on the Pentaprism microphones as channel 1 and channel 2. Actually reversed. I'm using the XLR in channel 1, channel 2, and then internal mics are on channel 3 and 4. Now, my channels are massively clipped on 1 and 2 of the XLR because I didn't set my microphones up for recording in 24-bit. I have my microphone set up right now so that it is really basically going to work really well for my 32-bit float recording, and we'll get to that in a second. So you'll see that you have that option here. Now, in tandem with that, when you're going to be doing XLR plus camera audio, which is going to be either 3.5 or the internal microphones, one of the things you'll notice is that if I go into audio quality in the top here, you'll see audio quality in this case is locked at 48 kilohertz 24-bit. There's not an option that I can change. I also have the ability here for changing monitor. Do I want rec sound or do I want the real time? Real time is just going to be that it's recording all of the audio. So whenever you want to use the internal microphones, this is something to be aware of, is that you are... or internal microphones with the XLR, you're going to be locked into using 48 kilohertz 24-bit. So you're not going to get 32-bit if you want to use the internal microphones. If you wanted to be doing 4 full channels of 32-bit float audio, this is where you have to change the XLR plus camera. You have to change this to XLR. Once you change that to XLR, so the actual, just you're only using the interface from the XLR adapter, this is where I can go into to audio quality, and I can change this between 48 kilohertz 32-bit or 48 kilohertz 24-bit. If you're going to be doing 4-channel in this case, honestly, I would recommend recording 32-bit float. Vast majority of tools out there, editing programs, I think, outside of maybe the built-in native OS video editing software, is going to support 32-bit, so it kind of just makes sense to record it. What you'll notice is that you have all 4 of your channels. Now, I'm using 3.5 millimeter input from the Saramonic mics, and you'll notice that the 3.5 input is going to be set automatically to channel 3 and 4. Your channel 1 and channel 2 are going to be your XLR inputs onto the XLR1 or the XLR2 adapter. If you're using the XLR1 will give you 4-channel when you pair it with the XLR itself, because you have channel 1 and 2, and then channel 3 and 4 are going to be your in-camera microphones. So in that particular case with the XLR1, you'll be at that 48 kilohertz 24-bit. And then depending on which camera you're using, that's where you may have a lower bit rate option as well, or a lower bit rate and lower frequency or hertz for it. It might only be down to 24 hertz. So a couple different options there. Another thing that comes up, a lot of times we've had questions about, hey, I've turned 4-channel audio on, recording, I have stuff plugged into 3.5, but I can't hear any audio. You know, I'm trying to monitor audio on the camera, but I can't hear anything. It's broken. What's going on? As I just pointed out, if you are using the 3.5 millimeter input on the XLR2, this is going to be recording to channels 3 and 4 when you're in 4-channel audio. And what that'll tell you is that by default, the camera is going to be set up to be monitoring channel 1 and 2 together. So if I were to plug headphones into this and try to listen, I'm not going to hear anything. So you have to go in and change this to monitor 3 and 4. Or, safer bet, if you're not sure if you're going to be using the other 2 channels, you can change it to actually be listening to all 4 channels. So this will be basically just taking all 4 inputs, feeding them through so you can monitor them. The other thing to kind of keep in mind here when you're going to be using 4-channel audio, or primarily when you're going to be using 32-bit float audio, is that your monitoring now is locked to recorded sound. This means that the sound that you are getting is what is being recorded. So stand by, you're not going to always hear the sound out of this. You'll notice if I change this back to 48 kilohertz 24-bit, I still can't. Because the camera has to take all 4 of those channels, process them so that it can be embedded in the footage. So keep that as part of some of the information when you're going to be choosing and working with this, especially if you've never worked with 4-channel audio or you've never worked with 32-bit float. If I do want to get real-time sound, right? I don't want to be listening to rec sound. This is where if I go in and say I turn 4-channel audio off, you're going to notice here, I still can't select it. The way you get the real-time audio out of this is by using the internal camera's microphones. That'll be a big distinction for the way some people may want to work with the camera. So if you know that you want to be able to hear audio through real time instead of the rec sound, so how it's going to be paired to the actual video recording, you would need to basically bypass the XLR adapter and use the 3.5 millimeter in on the camera. In real world, from everything that I've basically done with the camera for quite some time now since we've launched this camera, I haven't had any concerns with rec sound. I know there are some areas of audio capture where that may cause an issue for you. And in cases like that, that's where you're probably not going to be needing to record 4-channel in a lot of cases. Or maybe you don't need 32-bit. So you can use the internal microphones because on the GH7, its audio quality is going to be stuck to 4824 when you're going to be doing this internally. But now that I'm stuck, now that I've changed it here into where it's only going to be recording 2 channels, you'll see that while yes, I'm still using the XLR, I'm plugged into the 3.5, it's converting that and putting it into channel 1 and channel 2. You'll notice that I have the ability to also come in here and select 96 kilohertz 32-bit. When you're going to be in 32-bit, if you've never worked with it before, looking at the audio meters here, the audio levels, you'll notice a couple of things. For one, there is no clipping shown on the audio meters. It just goes to 0 and it's green all the way through. Where if I change this back to 24-bit, you'll notice that the microphones I've got in here, and it's pointing away from me, is massively clipping, like very easily. Just at this volume, it's going right up there. You get right through the yellow into the red, and it's pinning it there. Again, if I go back to 32-bit float, now it's just green and I'm not seeing any clipping here. This is one of those benefits that you would see really nicely with working with 32-bit float, is that it is going to give you much more flexibility to work with audio in post, where if you say you don't have the full ability to massively adjust your audio prior to getting on set, right? You have that ability to then take take the audio file, bring it into something like Audition or whatever audio software that you want to work with that's compatible with 32-bit float, and then you can pull those highlights. You can pull the high end down, or if I'm whispering really quietly, I can lift the kind of quieter parts up. You can tell I'm not the biggest audio guy out there. I'm using very general terms, and if you are like an audio engineer, please don't crucify me on this. But ultimately, if you are going to be recording and doing a lot of stuff in 32-bit float, right, you're going to be really working, with a lot of higher end audio. The biggest thing to remember is that you can still clip audio when you're going to be recording, even if 32-bit float. It is not a silver bullet for audio capture. The reason I say that is it has nothing to do necessarily with 32-bit float or the XLR1 or XLR2 adapter. What it has to do with is the microphones that you're going to be using. It's the fact that when you are using the various different kind of microphones, so in this particular case, these are the little Ceramic blink system. Most commonly, what ends up happening when I've had people saying like, hey, I'm recording and why is it clipping? Why am I getting, kind of scratchy audio? Why do my, the loud noises are just up and falling apart? It's not that you're clipping the file itself. It's that you are overwhelming what your microphone is able to capture. So, you'll notice that there are various different microphones to work with. Whether you want to go XLR and work with something like what I use here for the live streams, which is a Rode NT1. If I take this NT1 and I plug it into the XLR on the XLR2, and I go out to my motorcycle and I put it right up against the exhaust and I rev the hell out of my bike, I can then bring that in post, and I've got enough headroom and enough dynamic range in that microphone, in this microphone, that I can pull that sound back and I'm not clipping the sound of the exhaust on my bike. And I have a loud exhaust on the bike. But if I do that with this, or I do that with, what microphone is this one up here? Yeah, what microphone is this one? And I do it with, say, like Video Mic NTG. Those microphones do clip. So know what microphones you're going to be using and what kind of platform you're going to be working with for determining what is the most appropriate tool for it. If you're out there and you're capturing weddings and doing general events, almost any microphone that you're going to work with, you're going to see a benefit in recording with 32-bit float. If you are recording concerts or you're doing work where you're pulling, you're using like, the DJI Lav mics, or the Rode mics, or these Ceramic mics, or you're using a shotgun mic, things like that. If you're recording in a concert environment, you are most likely going to overwhelm those microphones that you're using, especially if you're trying to capture audio from like the PA system, but you're not plugged into the board. This is an area where if you do want to record something like that, and you're going to be using the camera, this is where if you are by the board, by where the audio is being actually captured and presented out, if you're able to pull a line off that, you can plug that right in here because you know that it's going to be mixed well because of the team that's using it, and you can then just record that XLR into this. You could do it 3.5, probably wouldn't recommend it in a situation like that. Just go right to the XLR. And the benefit here is that instead of using an external recorder for 32-bit float, you're gonna have you're gonna have that audio file embedded right into the particular video file that you're capturing, so you don't have to worry too much about syncing in post and things like that. You'd really only have to deal with that if you are like multicam setup and you're using one camera as like your main audio capture, so that you've got the 32-bit float. and then just syncing them in post later. Let's take a look at some of the other questions that came in, because I saw a whole bunch of them. I was wondering, is there some quality difference between preamps used in the cameras? For example, the GH7 expected to have better preamps than the G9 Mark II. I mean, noise floor, etc., not 32-bitness. Yeah, so preamps will be slightly different between cameras. When you go into the GH line of cameras, you're typically going to have, or any of the H series, right? So GH or S1H. You're typically going to have, better overall tools, right, for audio. In this particular case, in-camera preamps, so the 3.5 mil inputs, I think across the board, they're for kind of what I was saying before. If you are a wedding or an event videographer, they're going to be fine. I have yet to run into a real situation where, people are using the internal 3.5 mil inputs, plugging microphones in. It's about run-of-the-mill that you'll find across the board in the industry. When you go to the external audio recording, so like with the XLR1, XLR2, you are bypassing the in-camera preamps because the audio is being generated up in the actual adapter, and then it's being injected through the hot shoe into the footage, and then it's being combined there. The XLR adapters are going to get you better audio, and you tie that into whether or not you work at 24-bit, 32-bit float, whether you're recording 16-bit. All of those different kind of combinations at a very broad level. If you're an audio engineer, I know it's a lot more nuanced than that, and there's a lot more detail involved in this. But you will get better audio using an XLR adapter. You do also typically get better audio when you go up to the higher end cameras. But I'd say between a G9 Mark II and a GH7, because those are both flagship cameras, G9 Mark II being the flagship for the stills users, GH7 being the flagship for, like the hybrid, much more leaning into video. They're pretty much going to be about the same for the internal preamps. What will change there is what access you have to like XLR1 or XLR2, how you want to use the audio there, what file types you want to record with. That's where you're going to see, some of those differences there. I think it's Pedro says, I would like to use my XLR2 with my S52X. Can we expect a firmware so we can use it? Thank you. I don't know at this point. I honestly don't know. So stay tuned. If we get information like that, we'll obviously talk about it. Lewis says, is there any way to detach the audio info from photo video modes? To detach the audio info from photo video modes. Not sure I'm following what the question is, Lewis. What do you mean by detach the info from photo and video? Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that. JC says, I set GH7 with two zebra settings of 90 and 100. When shooting vlog, they don't get triggered on screen, like on my GH6. This also occurs with real-time LUT and baked-in LUT and video. Any fix? So JC, I have to double-check, and this is probably something that we'll talk with Matt about next week as far as like zebras and the kind of recommended numbers. He's told me before, but I don't use zebras, so I can't remember what number you set it to. I believe it is 80 is where they will turn. The big difference there is that when you look at the GH7 and the newer iterations of the cameras, so one, the GH7 uses dynamic range boost for the vast majority of recording options available, and it's to a wider range of ISO values. In the GH6, it was much more limited, so it's possible that, when you're not using DR boost, you're more likely to clip highlights. Dynamic range boost is going to help you in the highlights as well. So it's possible that's why you were seeing them there versus the GH7. You're not seeing them because the GH7 has more highlight dynamic range. But I would most likely defer that question to next week when we have Matt on the stream with us. McCary says, what would you recommend to connect S5 II and G85, two of them, plus G9 Mark II to control and monitor a multicam setup? So as far as monitoring goes, that's where it depends on the environment that you're in, McCary. If it's in a studio, something as simple as like an ATEM or an ATEM Mini would be great, and those would be fine. If you're out in the field, you'd still probably be looking at like something like an ATEM and taking the HDMI feeds, but you're not going to have control over the cameras that way. So yeah, that's where you're going to kind of see the differences there. Yeah. Let's see here. Oasis says, and just a reminder, if you have a question, tag at LUMIX USA, because otherwise I'll only see the question if I happen to see it. Is there any way to restrict the recording output channels to only two instead of default 4 when using camera's inbuilt mic, S5 IIX? At this time, no. The S5 II, S5 IIX, and the GH6 always has 4-channel. The GH7 is the only camera right now that supports the separate, where you can turn off the other 2 channels. Pedro says, can we connect the XLR microphone to a channel strip prior to the XLR1 or XLR2? Is there any inconvenience? Thank you. Channel strip. So. Okay. I think I'm looking at what you're talking about here. I just have to confirm what is it you're looking at and asking, so I can tell you if there's going to be an issue or not. Realistically, there's not any issue putting anything in line between your audio, the actual capture device, whatever processing you want to do beforehand, and then plugging it into the XLR1 or XLR2. There really wouldn't be an issue there. The XLR, the audio adapter on the camera is just going to take whatever feed is coming in. You have various different tools on the XLR adapters to basically say like, hey, what input are you giving it? So if we go in, no, not that one. Stay on this one. So if we go in and like we look at it, right? Like you have the ability to change like, am I doing line in? Is it a mic? Is it a powered mic? What the gain level, what the low cut is. You have your gain levels here. And then you have limiters as well. So you have controls to kind of get it matched up to what it is that you are sending it. And then, kind of go from there for what, basically how you want it to work. You're not required to have anything specific for, say, like 32-bit float if you're on an XLR2. Like I said, at that point, it's really just down to whether or not you're going to overwhelm the microphones that you're using, or if the signal that you're going to be sending into the XLR2 is clean and not clipped prior to when it gets to the XLR2. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward system to work with that. Let's see here. What's the other questions here? Wild Ride. Okay, yeah, that was Wild Ride. How about the headphone port on these cameras? Can they handle high impedance headphones? I haven't used high impedance headphones with these. Typically with these cameras, they're designed with, basically all the normal kind of headphones that the average person's going to be using. So, I mean, like I've plugged in, earbuds, I've plugged in, over the head, kind of not cans, but like I've plugged in like, where are they? Like Art Techniques. Where are they? These are old Techniques headphones that I've plugged in. These are, I forget what generation is. These are the EH-T700s. So these are like hi-fi headphones, and they work perfectly fine. I've even plugged in stuff like this. Like, this is like a Corsair like gaming headset that has the 3.5 out and plugged it in. It works perfectly fine as well. So I don't think you're really gonna have that much of an issue with microphones unless they're like ultra specialized. In which case, the audio coming out of the 3.5, I mean, it's really just there for quick monitoring. It's not as if you're going to be listening to hi-fi through it, like that kind of thing. But like I said, I'm not the biggest on audio. I just know, hey, it sounds good. My levels tell me I'm not clipping. And I know, arguably, I am on a point of where, like, I know just enough to be dangerous when it comes to this kind of stuff. Can S5, yeah, so McCary, yeah, S5 II series is limited to 4-channel at this point. Cliff says, any word on waveform clipping line display someday? Does Lumix have plans for IBC show? Will you be there? I will not be at IBC. Typically, the US team doesn't go to IBC. I think that's our European team. I don't think there are any plans for IBC. And waveform clipping line display. Not that I know of for on-camera display. I know that it's in the user's guide, like user manual, tells you what the numbers are. But yeah, that's about all I got for you, Cliff. I've done all variables and modes, mostly 4K, 25, and 50. Anyways, thanks for that. I will try LUMIX UK for AF troubleshooting. Yeah, minutes. I wish I could help you there, but I've never run into like slow tracking. And I think also it kind of has to. It may have to do with like what are you trying to track? Are you in recording? Are you using any VFR functionality, any high-speed functionality, that kind of stuff? I know you're saying 4K, 25, and 50. But in those modes, I haven't seen any problems with it. And I've done tracking for a decent number of, relatively fast motorcycles, things like that. Now, if you're trying to say like Formula 1, sometimes that may depend on the lens, that may depend on the mode that you're in, that kind of stuff. If it's people in general, haven't seen any points there come up of it being slow. So it's a bit confusing to me what could be causing an issue there. KCTB, can you put in a firmware request to limit? Yeah, we've put that request in. Two channels we wanted. How do you even utilize all 4 channels? Is that just through the XLR one? Yeah, so the 4-channel audio, if you're on like the S5 Mark II or Mark IIX, that's going to be with the XLR1 adapter. You'll have 2 channels in the XLR adapter, and then you'll have the other 2 channels will either be the in-camera microphone or the 3.5 millimeter going into the camera. That's how you'd access all 4 channels for those cameras. KCTB, if you just use mic in, you only get 2 channels, right? Such as using wireless mics like Sennheiser. No, so KCTB, so right now if you do plug in like a 3.5 into the camera, you'll get 4 channels of audio showing up in your timeline. 2 of them will be blank. Channel 1 and channel 2 will have audio in them. The GH7 is what allowed us to change some of that stuff because there were a lot of other changes involved with this camera. JC, thanks for looking at the question about GH7 and Zebras. I will check in next week for confirmation from Matt. Yeah, Matt's a lot better when it comes to like the various tools, kind of explaining them a lot better than I can. Again, a lot of this comes down to where I'm much more of a photographer. I've been forced into the video side, so I know a lot of it, but I also use different tools. So like if I'm going to be exposing, I use Luminance Spot Meter instead, and I use Waveform, and then I just eye it. Because one, I'm not editing for HDR video output. I've tried that before. It's fun, but I'm not doing any of that, so I don't have to, massively push it all the way up, kind of thing. JC, just jumped through there. Using XLR Pro 3.5 to XLR with Rode Pro Wireless in 1 input and NTGE3 in 2 input my setup. Do you have an instructional video to record 32-bit float in settings and XLR2 settings? There isn't like a specific XLR2 video out that I'm aware of. We have a lot of stuff that goes on, like our European team, our Australian team. There's a lot of videos out there. I don't always have the bandwidth to, really watch every single one of them. You'd take a look most likely at the not the LUMIX USA YouTube channel, our sister channel, the LUMIX channel. That's our global channel. That's usually where you'll see like a lot of the support kind of videos. There might be some up there on that for 32-bit float. But in general, like if you're plugging in 3.5 for the Rode Pro wireless mics and an NTG3 into, I assume that's input 2. Yeah, you would basically just be coming into the setup, looking on the audio here. You can leave it at 2-channel at that point if you're using the 2 XLR inputs, because they're going to be channel 1 and channel 2. Literally just go in and select which resolution for audio you want to be recording at. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that if you are wanting to do 32-bit float, you do have to have the camera in either the MOV wrapper. So you either have to be in MOV or you have to be in ProRes. If you are trying to record an MP4, you don't have access to 32-bit float. But in these two particular modes, you'll have access in all of the various recording modes. As long as you're MOV or ProRes, you'll be good to go. And then as far as setup goes, typically just leave the gain pots in the middle, and then just usually that's how I record. I make sure that the microphone input is set right, and then I believe I turn off. Let's have the set. Gain set to 0. Low cut I usually have off, and then I just make sure that my mic is set for either line mic or 48 volt, and then I turn limiters off. That's how I record, and I have yet to run into a single problem recording that way with what I do. But I'm not doing ultra high level audio recording. JC, GH7, what is the best settings to ensure the eye is in focus from focus modes or any other tips? This will come down to what you're going to be capturing, right? So in the focus settings, you have your different subject detections. So if you're going to be doing face and eye for, say, like interviews, I highly recommend leave this in eye, face, and body. This compensates for if the person turns away from camera and it can't see both eyes. And then targeting part is, as I said, face and eye. When you're in video, you've got AF custom settings for here. Remember that when you go into these, you can do display speed, and this will tell you what the difference is, like what each one does. So AF speed, slow, it just means that it's going to move the focus slower. Fast obviously means it's going to speed it up, but know that when you put it higher than what it is default out of the camera, you are more likely to see jumping. Now this is different than pulsing. Jumping with speed is going to be because I am moving constantly. People rarely sit perfectly still, and if the camera is trying to ensure and constantly check focus and constantly be seeing where the phase difference is between the person moving, that's where with phase, because it can move very fast, you'll actually get like a lot of this if you turn it up too high. It's actually quite easy to see if you go on YouTube or Twitch or one of those platforms and you watch like video game streaming. You see a lot of times people that are using some of those cameras that are argued as having the best autofocus, they make one tiny little move and all of a sudden the background's doing this. Like, I never understood how that is better than having it, kind of slowly moving in and out. But we each have different opinions. Your AF sensitivity, this is where it will look and say, well, how much, kind of in simple terms, how much wiggle room do you want to give it, right? How fast do you want it to react to me, like maybe making a slight little movement? Again, if you turn this all the way to positive responsiveness, it means it's going to be checking every single little time you move. If phase is different, it's going to readjust the focus. And that's where you're going to see a lot of the, constant moving of the focus, because I would be moving. So yeah, 9 out of 10 times, I'm leaving this setting off. I'm leaving AF custom settings off now, and I start there. If there are certain situations, like if I'm capturing video for, say, like the motorcycles, right? This is where typically I will come in for the AF custom settings, and I will usually turn responsiveness up, and I will turn the speed up if I'm doing fast-paced motorcycles, because they're moving really fast. I need the system to be very responsive to that subject moving through the frame. If I'm doing talking heads type content, I want this to be zeroed, because I don't want the system kind of reacting to a subtle movement from somebody. So those particular things in tandem with, making sure that you have, face and eye set up right. If you're in a big environment where you've got multiple people, this is where potentially coming in and changing what AF mode you use can help for isolating out. On the live stream camera that I'm using here, this is my S5 Mark II. On this, I just use full area because I don't have other people walking into the frame. So it's fine just letting the camera pick face and eye. As I move through the frame, it follows and tracks. But if I had another person here and I don't want it focusing on them or caring what that person does, one, our system is pretty solid across the board to stay on me with the recent updates that we've done. But if it's going to be much more challenging, this is where I would, change the zone for it, right? This is where I'd go to either Zone AF or One Area Plus, and then, kind of make sure that that target's on the person that I want to have in focus for the eyes. Where did we go? McCary, if G9 Mark II is Pro Photo, GH7 is Pro Video, then in L mount, S5 Mark II being Pro Video, what is the current Pro Photo model with the higher resolution PDAF? So just to be very clear, S5 Mark II is a photo first version of the S5 Mark II series. The S5 Mark II X is the video focused of these models. So those are what we have right now. Would I call them Pro? Like, if we talk like GH line, no, because they're not S1H cameras. That's what the S1H is. If you need ultra high res, we still have the S1R. If you need Netflix certification, that's where the S1H is. Outside of that, it's S5 Mark II, much more leaning towards photo. S5 IIX leaning much more towards video. As far as that goes. Since teleconverters aren't the best about... Since teleconverters aren't the best, how about a Lumix version of the OM 150 to 600 that works with dual IS? Why can't OM and Lumix play nice? You'd have to ask OM that. We are two separate companies. The Micro Four Thirds consortium is what it is. It's owned by OM, or it's owned by Olympus. I don't even think OM owns it, or is the owners of it. Yeah, that would be an OM question, so, with that lens. KCTB, moving forward with all cameras using the newer XLR, will all cameras use the newer XLR2 hardware? Does the XLR1 work on newer cameras too? Does the newer unit work on the S5 IIX? XLR1 will work on the newer cameras. XLR2 only works on the GH7 as of right now. I don't know future plans for it. But yeah, as of right now, if you want XLR2, you got to have a GH7 with it. Jeff, with dual native ISO set to auto, when the ISO went up to 640, would the camera jump to the high gain or stay at low gain? Since low gain, the ISO goes up to 800 non-extended. It'll depend on the mode that you're in. So the switch point for dual native, if you're in standard photo profiles or even standard video profiles, so it's standard, vivid, landscape, flat, stuff like that, is 100 and 640. When you go into vlog, it's 640 and 4000. If you have it set into auto, when it goes up to 640, it'll be in low. When it hits 640, that's where it'll change over to the high circuit. You can typically see these changes if you do like the lens cap test, but that test doesn't really tell you anything. What I highly recommend is that if you know that you're going to be, you are shooting to prioritize to make sure that you are at native ISO, or you're working in the range that you want to work in, because you're going to be shooting low light, just put the camera into the higher low mode at that point, or just select a manual ISO. Don't use auto. Auto can work well. Auto works well for, especially in photography. I use auto ISO, I use aperture priority, and I have a minimum shutter speed set, just because that's how I capture. And the truth is, from a stills perspective, 640 to 800, whether you're on the low circuit or the high circuit, unless you are massively pushing those files, I don't see much of a difference for day-to-day capture. It's going to depend when you start looking at much more, I don't want to say specialized shooting. It's going to really come in more where it's like, I know what I need. I need the most dynamic range. If that's the case, then don't let the camera auto pick an ISO for you. Pick the ISO and set your settings accordingly. Same in video. If you know you need the maximum dynamic range possible and the lowest noise possible, given that balance, just put it in manual and select the ISO, and then choose lenses accordingly, use neutral density filters accordingly. That's going to get you the better result for it. Andy, is there a way to assign custom button to make an APS-C crop in photo? No, there isn't. We don't do APS-C crop for stills capture. The closest thing that you would do is, see if I can do it quickly here. The closest thing that you would do is you would have to have, for one, you would want to shoot RAW and JPEG. You would be adjusting your picture size, most likely to medium in this particular case. And then this is where you go into, I think it's teleconverter. Shows you how often I do this anymore. Actually, this might be in the custom settings menu. Really shows you how often I do this, but I can't even find where it is in the menu. White balance, night mode. Why can't I find this? Why is my brain just not working? Is it in the photo mode, and I'm just being dumb? I think I might just be completely missing this. I will have to take a look at that. But basically, you would use the teleconverter function, and then change the JPEG to like medium, and then that's what you would get your functionality for, to be able to crop in. But there isn't like an APS-C mode for stills on our cameras. Any reason to avoid the audio limiter? I usually leave it on just to catch the peaks. I have recording levels at minimum. Also, is there a reason to not record at minimum levels at 24-bit? So I don't use the limiter when I'm on 32-bit float, but I'm also not ever really pushing audio hard enough that I'm honestly worried about clipping. I don't even truly need 32-bit float. To me, it's easier to record in it. I don't really have to, it's one less thing I have to think about while I'm out in the field, because I can just record, and then if I screwed my audio up, I can just pull the levels down. Is there a reason to not record at minimum level at 24-bit? Truthfully, like recording your different levels there, a lot of times that's really just going to come down to how low, like how much of the noise floor do you want. I take a pretty strong stance of, if the tools are there to tell you, hey, I'm recording, usually my audio is to about -12 decibel is where I want my levels to kind of be at a normal speaking voice. This way, if I do speak louder, I can watch it go up, and I know that I'm like just outside of clipping if I'm going to be recording 24 or 16-bit. But when I'm in 32-bit, it just doesn't matter. That's why I changed everything over the second the second this came out, so I could start doing it that way. Always, many cameras have the option to lock auto white balance. I believe we do on the S5 IIX. So in the, put this back into the video mode. I believe we do have auto white balance lock on these cameras now. Yeah, we do. The S5 II and the S5 IIX do have an auto white balance lock function. This is going to be under the gear menu, and then it's going to be under the first image quality page. Auto white balance lock settings. For here, operation with shutter. In this particular case, I say, well, this. Or you can assign it to a button where I can come in here. Oh, no. I can come in here and I can actually program this to be a button on the camera for auto white balance lock. If I remember exactly what page it's on, would be nice. We're going here. Auto white balance lock. Of course, I went the long way to get to it. So AWBL. So now I can hit that and I can lock my auto white balance. So I press right there. You see in the top left, it says auto white balance lock. It's locked. So Oasis, we do have this. You do have auto white balance lock on the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark IIX. Let's see here. Where can I get a LUMIX shirt? At this point, we don't sell them. That last I have question. Which mode or setting would you use to keep multiple people in focus with potential mics in the way? I don't want to don't want the focus to drift to the mics. So for that particular case, Macari, that's usually where I'm going to be using one area or one area plus. Because there I can isolate out, like I have a microphone and I do keep it down below the framing just because I don't like the look of having the microphone in the frame. So yeah, with that I would just have the box on like the center person, right? The camera's not able to focus on all three, so you're gonna have to just pick one of them, and then hopefully your depth of field covers enough to get all three people in that particular frame there. But yeah, I would use one area plus, and that can help tremendously there. Typically, you'd probably be okay with just using the full area or a zone, but if you really want to be, extra cautious, use one area or one area plus, and then put it over top of the subject with your detection modes on. EX teleconverter is the feature I couldn't find on my S5 II. It's not in the menu. Yeah, I'll have to take a look, Andy. I've done it before. For some reason, I can't find it. Let's see here. David says, do Micro Four Thirds and full frame have the ability to adapt ENG 2/3 B4 lenses? You can pretty much adapt any lens to the Micro Four Thirds or the full frame, the S or the L mount line of cameras. It's going to vary depending on what functionality you have, because B4 lenses there. I know there are a lot of people that do convert B4 lenses or adapt B4 lenses onto the Micro Four Thirds platform. Full frame would be a bit crazy to do it because the image area is going to be so small on that sensor. You'd have to go in and basically, say like, look, you'd have to go into pixel to pixel 1080p just to get the framing down to where it's small enough for that particular lens coverage. Otherwise, you're just going to have a big field of black frame and that kind of thing. Yeah. Let's see here. Carrie, so tracking multiple subjects is not possible, maybe in future products. Well, so tracking multiple subjects is possible. It's understanding what you mean by tracking multiple subjects. No camera tracks multiple subjects. They can't. Focus plane is the focus plane. That's it. There's one focus plane. So you can see multiple subjects. It's a matter of what you want the camera to basically do. If you want it to have where it's the yellow box and then 2 white boxes around the subjects, then you're in full area or zone, and then you can use the joystick to toggle left and right and go between them. But even that, if it's 3 people and they're in the same plane, it's not actually doing anything. That's more of like a placebo in the industry to say like, hey, we've got really good focus because we can see so many subjects. Yeah, we can see all of them. You can still only focus on one. That's just how optics work. Unless you're some of those like outside companies that their cameras aren't around anymore. What I recommend in situations like that, like for that, is that pick the subject that is, the primary, right? That's in the center. That's center, I mean, as in the depth of field region. Pick that subject. Make sure your depth of field's enough, and all 3 of them will be in focus. If you want to change which subject is the priority there, you can either just tap the screen and move that AF box to the new subject, and then the face detection or whatever detection mode you're using will then lock to that person. Change to another one, do the same thing, use the joystick to move them that way. That's how I would recommend doing it. If you're very specifically trying to make sure that you don't capture like the microphone in front or something that's partially obscuring that person's view. Yeah. Steven, am I wrong in thinking that crop zoom replaced EX teleconverter? Yes and no. Crop zoom is a new function and a new feature that you have, like the S9 and the GH7 has it. The other cameras don't have that. To be fair, I was just looking on my GH7, so that could be why I also was not finding it. But yeah, the crop zoom will be a little bit different, because crop zoom and hybrid zoom are designed to be pairing with various different kind of components for your setup. So if you're going to be doing zooming and you want to intelligently have the system pair a much longer focal length by allowing the sensor to crop, that's what you get in hybrid zoom. Crop zoom will just force a change there where you can do medium, small, or extra small. So in some ways, Steven, like, yeah, on the cameras that have crop zoom, yeah, you can do that, and you can always set a, like, I want this to be, medium, and then do it that way. It's one way to do it, but that's only going to affect the JPEG. The RAW files are still always going to be the full resolution. So potentially, if you have a camera that has crop zoom, Andy, then yeah, you'd be able to use it that way. And this will be the last one here. Oasis, my question about auto white balance lock was different. We have to manually lock the auto white balance before starting the recording, but there is no option to lock it once the recording button is pressed and it stays locked. Yes, there is. You can tell it to press that and lock. Like I just clicked recording. Oh, okay. Oasis, I think I'm following what you're saying here. Yeah, so auto white balance, I mean, yeah, you would, if you want it to lock and not constantly be auto white balancing, you just have to press the auto white balance lock button. Yeah, I guess I understand why you would want it to do it, where if you just start the recording and have that happen. I would say the reason that it probably isn't like that at ours is because there are going to be times where maybe you are shifting around and auto white balance, you want it to white balance because maybe the lighting changes or you move an environment. And And in cases like that, it makes more sense to be able to toggle it than to have to stop recording, then restart recording because you want it to change auto white balance. So, cool. All right. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I do have to wrap the stream up. We will be live again next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And as we mentioned, we will have Matt Fraser on with us. We'll be talking about continuing the video conversation, and we'll have more details up about what we're actually going to kind of cover on that particular stream shortly. But yeah, other than that, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you haven't yet, and you do have a GH7, or you are planning to buy a GH7 and you are in the US, take a look at the promotion that we have running for the GH7. If you already own it, claim your CF Express card. It's 320 gig, or you can upgrade it yourself for 250 to get to the 640 gig CF Express Pro-Cinema card from SanDisk. Outside of that, yeah. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Hope you have an awesome rest of your weekend. Get out there, take photos, capture videos, let us know, show them to us, share them on social, tag us, and all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, other than that, I will see you all next Thursday, 2 p.m. right here on LUMIX Live. Later.